If you're looking to start your therapeutic microdosing journey, but don't know where to start, especially when looking for the highest quality ingredients, including nootropics, and what you'd expect from a true microdose capsule, check out our friends at Brainsupreme. They offer the absolute highest quality ingredients so you can start your microdosing journey knowing that you're getting top-notch ingredients. To find out more, visit their website using that link right in the description, and you can get 15% off your entire order.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Danny Goler. I'm excited to announce that Doors of Perception is now available free on Relay, which is a brand new streaming service. It's also available on Amazon Prime. Occult Louisiana, my first film, is available on Tubi, Roku, Apple, and a few more of those streamers. We are booking guests for March. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome back to the show Danny Goler. He is an independent researcher who has dedicated the past decade to understanding the fundamental nature of reality. Danny, welcome back. How you doing?
Thank you so much for having me back, brother.
It's great to see you again. You have been on an incredible journey since your initial experience with DMT and a laser pointer, which allowed you and now many others to perceive what appears to be code running through our reality, for lack of better words. Since then, you've been working with incredible researchers and scientists, not only recreating the initial experience, but utilizing a variety of scientific tools to explore the possibilities associated with this phenomena. And I'm really looking forward to hearing about your latest experiments and discoveries. Before we do, it's been a little while. Remind the audience a little bit about yourself and let them know how they can find out more.
Well, thank you so much for this intro. I mean, it's everything that you said. I'm the guy who claims to have found a code in the laser when people happen to be on the spirit molecule, and they can just either go to my YouTube channel, which is Dango Thoughts, DANGO Thoughts, or just all of my links are on DannyGoler.com, DANNYGOLER.com, and it's really Danny Goler across most of it. So Substack, Instagram, TikTok, you can find me through my website mostly.
For the audience that may not be familiar, you don't have to tell your whole story again, but maybe a brief synopsis that brings us up to date with everything that you've been working on.
Sure. So a few years ago, I believe it's 5 years ago at this point, I became public with making an announcement, making a claim that I discovered that if you project a diffracted laser on any surface and you happen to be on DMT, you will see what seems to be like a self-executing code of some sort, which sparked a global conversation. I mean, it didn't happen overnight. It was many months and then years that in the making, and then slowly but surely, more and more people became aware of it. A lot of people started replicating it, and now we have where we arrive today is that we have an official nonprofit called Code of Reality, which is the investigative arm of this whole project. We're aiming to build a research center very soon, and me and my partner David Carter, who's officially moving for that specifically cross country. So it seems to be going all in the right direction. Since then, I've been speaking to a lot of different scientists. And we have some scientists on board. We're finishing shooting a movie very soon about this whole phenomena called The Discovery. Hopefully, it'll be out by June or July. I would hope.
Wow.
And yeah, that's about it. I mean, it goes through iterations, which means that now we're at the stage where slightly more mainstream scientists are starting to kind of talk about it. Obviously, it also gets a lot of pushback because of the obvious reasons. The claim is kind of out there. So it stands to reason that the majority of mainstream science would first put its cold shoulder towards it, which it should. It's exactly what it should be doing. That is the job of science, to maintain coherence within the structure of our knowledge of humanity. And as Terence McKenna used to famously say, if it's real, it can take the pressure. And my contention is that it is real. So it should be put through the full ringer of science, and if it's it holds water, it will come out on the other end with as a fully fledged phenomenon that we should investigate as humanity.
Right on. Well, I love it, man. I think this is such important work. Maybe you could take us through the progression of experiments that started once you started to not only reach out to others, but once the scientific community got wind of everything.
I mean, honestly, all the obvious ones first, which is like we try to project on different surfaces. We try to play, like influence the person's mind in other ways aside from the spirit molecule. So expose people to frequencies, binaural beats, music. There's the mood change. It seems that currently the code is whatever it is. We don't really know. Just also to make it super clear, now that the conversation advanced to a stage of a more serious discussion, at this point it's important to make it clear that we don't know the first thing about it. We call it the code of reality because it's kind of it's kind of endearing, and I think of it more kind of like calling dark matter. Like, we don't know that it's matter, we just call it that because it interacts with gravity, so it just seems to be the thing that it might be, right? But we don't know the first thing about what it is. It's the same case with the code. We don't really know what it is. We don't know its code. We don't know its language. We don't know the first thing about it. All we know is that it's there. Everybody's seeing the same thing, it seems, and it's very stable, and it's in the way that it presents itself. So one of the things that we really try to focus on is isolate any parameter that might give us a handle on what is it exactly and how it comes to be observed in this way. And under that is everything I just mentioned, which is different surfaces, different conditions in which the observers look at it. We even did it inside of a Faraday cage. Didn't make any difference. We know that it works across many substances. All tryptamines work. All frequencies of light work, even when you're changing it in real time. We went to the incredible lab of Mark Sokol in New Jersey and Falcon Space. He officially investigates anti-gravity technology. So like he takes the whole UFO thing very seriously, and he does it open, like in an open way. So he says, if it's real, I'm going to figure it out. And we came to his lab, and he was very welcoming. He allowed us to play with all kinds of fun things in his lab. We tried polarizers. We tried, like I said, different substances. 5-MeO surprised me because 5-MeO, I wouldn't expect to see it on 5-MeO, but it's even clearer on 5-MeO, which is very strange. So like the code itself is even clearer on 5-MeO.
For the audience that isn't familiar, could you talk a little bit about the difference between 5-MeO and any other type of DMT?
Yeah, so there's two different types of DMT. What people usually mean by DMT, they mean NN-DMT, which is basically the dimethyltryptamine molecule with two nitrogen molecules attached to it, which is the very visual, super realistic, everything that people kind of know about DMT. And 5-MeO is the 5-methoxy with one oxygen with the dimethyltryptamine molecule. So it is what sometimes it is the thing that comes from the frog, the bufo frog. There's also a synthetic version of that, but it's basically the same molecule. The reason that it was surprising to see the code on it is because 5-MeO, in the way that it presents itself phenomenologically, is very different. It's not content driven. It's very diffused. So you basically just dissolve into an ocean of energy, and you're in the presence of some kind of a divine state of some sort. So I wouldn't expect to see too much content on it, and yet the code is as clear as day, even clearer than regular. And we even had a gentleman who, because of the way that the molecule binds in his brain, he actually can't experience the psychedelic explosion at all. Like he can't. Like he can smoke all day and he won't experience DMT at all. There's 1% of the population that has this. If I remember correctly, Joe Rogan said that young Jamie is actually like that. Like he can't experience this either. And yet, when he smoked the molecule and looked at the laser, he could see the code. So he can see hallucinations, but he can see the code. Now, this does not, of course, if we want to be fair and charitable, this does not automatically means that the code is real. Like if we want to steelman the argument that maybe this is still some kind of a visual phenomena that is generated by the brain, you can still find a path to say that that's still what's happening. But it definitely gives you a hint that you're on some kind of it's on a different tier, a different layer of execution of content in the brain than where hallucinations are. At least in that regard, it makes it unique. Right. So there's a lot of tests. We also try to test with magnets. We try to do rotating magnets. It is still yet to be tested if we can influence the mind with a powerful magnet and see what happens, like inside of an MRI or something like this. But there's a lot more tests that we need to run. We tried Lambertian surfaces, which eliminate speckle completely. It is interesting because the Lambertian surfaces does, well, if you also spin glass around. So basically, if you eliminate speckle entirely, then you can't see the code. But that doesn't really tell us much because the from the get-go, it was an insistence by whomever gave us the hints to kind of use the laser to use a laser versus to use a regular light. That was so. When you diffuse the speckle, you're essentially making the laser a regular light, like in terms of the way it casts itself on the surface. Of course, the light itself is still coherent light, but when you eliminate this, you're basically doing the same thing as just casting a regular light, and that kind of brings us back to square one. So there's a lot that needs to be tested this year. It's just a matter of budget and time, and this is why we want to build a center so we can actually do this full-time, show up every morning and actually do this. Because that's the only time I think real progress is going to start happening is when we're going to be doing that. Because otherwise, the progress is just too diffused. You talk about something, and then a month later you test it, and then you wait again, and you talk about it a few weeks later. It's not how it's too spread out through time. Like it has to be more consistent, and that's what we're working on now to secure a place. And we have all the brilliant minds we possibly can have, like for this kind of project, that already were volunteering their incredible time and effort. So now we can hopefully very soon be able to do this, full-time research basically.
Right on. Do you know if this code can also be seen through different kinds of altered states, not necessarily just psychedelics, maybe after breath work or meditative sessions, things of that nature?
So far, no luck with that.
So it has been tried.
I'm also very Yes, but I'm also very skeptical about these abilities in general. So like it might just be me. I think that, again, I want to be super clear. This is just my impression, right? Of course, I can be absolutely wrong about this. My impression is that there's a bit of hyperbole around these claims. So I actually don't think it's possible to induce the DMT state with breathwork. I don't think that's possible at all. I think that's a trope that people repeat. I don't think that's real. In fact, like depending on what you mean, right? So like, you can definitely have a close to like a 5-MeO experience, but the 5-MeO experience is just you dissolving into a sea of feeling. So sure, you can do this with breathwork, but when you really ask breathwork practitioners about like NN DMT, like the ones that obviously also tried DMT, so they would know. And, they would make the claim because it's very marketable, obviously. And by the way, I'm all for breathwork. I love it. But this specific claim about, DMT and breathwork, so when it's marketable to say, well, come release natural DMT and all that stuff, right? Maybe 5-MeO. But if you ask them, can you really get to a place where you can kind of see content, just like you see on NN-DMT? they will invariably admit that, well, of course not. I was like, well, okay, well then we're not comparing to DMT, are we? Like it's a completely different thing. That being said, I did meet a couple of women who just naturally could see it without any substances whatsoever, which means that, and again, to all the skeptics, yes, we don't really have a way to know until we really test this. But for all intents and purposes, the two individuals that I'm talking about specifically, they didn't really have anything to gain too much from just making that claim. They weren't like, all about it. They were just kind of like, oh, I see the thing, So I believe them, which means that the human mind probably can perceive it. One altered state that I will say that I do see like remnants of it sometimes is if I get really tired and I can kind of see the thing, but it's tricky because it doesn't have the same coherence. It's a little bit more kind of almost like my brain overlays it a little bit. And that already is a difference that is very difficult to make the distinction between, because instead of it being super coherent, it's now kind of there, but can belong with a family of phenomena. Is more like my brain kind of knows about it. So now that my brain is tired, you kind of project some of it on it maybe, but we don't know. Like the only way to really know this is to do some pretty specific tests with brain scans, with somehow controlling for the bias that exists, which is very difficult because it's already in there. So I would say currently the only thing that can kind of do something like this is being exhausted, but no other ways so far.
See, you said that it can be seen with any type of psychedelic substance, psilocybin, DMT, LSD. Is the code remain the same, or are there differences between each substance?
No.
Okay.
Exactly the same thing. Yeah. It's almost like you're just looking at this thing, and now it becomes available for you to see. It doesn't really change its character depending on the substance, no.
Has there been documentation of the code? Anything repeatable?
Yes. Well, repeatable, it's not possible at this stage of the game. You can say that it's enough collaborative agreement between people who are well-intentioned and are interested in the truth versus just kind of, just succumbing to whatever belief system. So we have kind of almost like a dictionary that we created from all the characters that people kind of agreed on. But no, this is nowhere near like a certainty, because the only way to have that is to have some kind of an ability to record from your experience, right? So like maybe a Neuralink or something. But until that moment comes, it's more kind of like an agreement, which is already kind of people's filters. So it's hard to know if it's exactly the same characters. Moving forward, I think we might have some ways to replicate these characters with more fidelity, but we'll see. This is a premature announcement, I would say.
If you had to describe the characters, what is the best way you would do so?
Closest thing is it kind of looks like Japanese or Hebrew or Sanskrit, but with the emphasis that it's none of those things. It's just kind of like the closest things to it. In some kind of a alien language, maybe Klingon. I don't know. Like it's just like it's nothing we're familiar with.
Going back to the experiments, I understand you did IV drip DMT. Could you tell us a little bit about those experiences? What those were like?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was amazing. The extended state experiment that we've done in Colorado with Kevin and Haley. Shout out to Kevin and Haley. We did basically like an IV drip of DMT, and we shot stuff for the movie, and we did a bunch of this with the laser, and we did brain scans, and I mean that was an incredible ride. I mean I loved it. We ended up going for almost 5 hours, and in that time I had 464 milligrams fed into my body, which is by far this is the greatest amount that Kevin knows about, who's the chemist behind the thing. Maybe somebody did more, I don't know. We weren't trying to break any records or anything like this. We were just kind of going and trying to do tests. And I keep telling Kevin kind of like, it would be fun to see like how far we can take this, right? Because the whole thing with DMTX is that they're trying to keep people there indefinitely or for a very long period of time to see what happens to the brain and how it acclimates. I would love to see what happens if I spend a day there or 2 days. Like I'm willing to try. I just need some nourishment. and I think the rest is fine. Like the majority, like I think your body is okay for these 2 days. Yeah, it's a lot of strain on the body, but you can. I think for science it will be an interesting thing to observe.
Yeah.
And I was very like it was just an incredible experience all around. I was, in the beginning I was projected to these heavenly realms, and I was literally shown kind of like the importance of ethics and morality and why they matter outside of just humans, how they connect to the larger picture, how it all kind of ties together to what the future stores for us, which isn't a surprise, of course. There's nothing new here, but it was so clear, that it was flashed out in such a clear way. It was as simple as seeing my hand. It was like, oh, well, when we do this, that's what happens later. When we do this, that's what happens later. It became the importance of how we treat each other, to make sure that it's on the good side. It made it so clear how paramount that is.
Yeah. How has the reaction been from the scientific community so far? Has there been any new theories or even conclusions about this?
No, of course not. I mean, this is just in its infancy. There's not going to be any conclusions by science for at least another 30 years, I would say. So like we can work, like, I mean, we have some theoretical frameworks, but they are all kind of up in the air right now, right? So like they require testing. Mm-hmm. If you just guess and guess and guess without really landing on anything, you're going to be guessing forever. So we need to run a lot of tests to verify any of these ideas. One of the ideas is that this is basically, we are the reference light in a hologram. The consciousness is the reference light in a hologram, and the object light is basically all the light in the universe when photons are emitted. And they move through something like a quantum Turing machine, basically. So all possible computations are packed into what light is. And when light is absorbed, when photons are absorbed in anything in the universe, the way it's expressed through the bulk, through space-time itself, is these moments of an experience of physicality, right? Which is like this intersection between the reference light, the object light, and the way that information moves through the screen on which it's all recorded. Now, because it sounds so extravagant, that's exactly right. You need to test this, right? So we need to see if this is kind of like a cool metaphor, or is it like really what's kind of going on? And the way to do that is to figure out what constitutes the change of angle of the reference light, and then try and influence it. And if it is at all correct, any of this idea, then the change of the angle of the reference light should change the phase between the reference light and the object light, or the way it's recorded on the screen, depending on what's the arrangement right now of the hologram. And it should change the content in a predictable way. Mm-hmm. And if all of this just sounded like just went over people's heads, the simple way of what I'm saying, the simple way of saying of what I'm saying is, it's just that we do have some kind of like theoretical frameworks that actually do hold water in terms of physics. So like the holographic principle is a pretty well established and accepted idea that is how actually most of leading physicists see the world through. But if it does apply to what we see, like the laser and the code in the laser, we have to run real tests to see if it's, at all accurate, or is it like something completely different and the whole thing falls apart. It is testable. It will just require us to create pretty elaborate experiments that would take way more than just a couple of things that we can build in our garage.
Yeah, right on. As with many people's experiences, it's often, but not all the time, associated with contact with what seem to be non-human intelligences, and this is also a big part of your experiences. Without having any conclusions, let's talk about possibilities as it relates to what these beings are, what their intentions are, what the relationship with us is. Based on your experiences and the others that you've been working with, do you have any thoughts on what these beings are?
They are the simulators. They simulate the space.
You think they facilitate reality in general?
Correct. Realities, many realities. From what I understand, there's basically almost like think of it like there's a central architect, and that architect basically issues contracts to different companies that do this. And this is the company that happens to be running one of our reality, as many others. So there's like very large number of these realities of all kinds. Some of them are very similar to what we experience. Other ones, so basically, the multiverse essentially. But I would say that the multiverse is also one of many, and these are all run by probably different companies that may kind of different species do this. And when civilizations inside these simulations that are conscious start to understand what's going on, then there are protocols to basically cushion the news. So like kind of allow you to absorb the ontological shock a little easier. And that's essentially what's going on. And it's being disclosed in a gentle way. So people keep talking about the disclosure. Well, the disclosure is not going to, according to from my perception of it, a lot of people don't like this, especially in the UFO community, because they want the mothership to land on the lawn of the White House or something. But that's not what I see as the disclosure is already happening. It's just being disclosed gently to every single person in the way that they can understand. And I would say that if you're looking for the disclosure out there, you're never going to find it. This is why I find these kind of, big announcements a little strange, because at least to me, it's clear that the disclosure is happening through us all the time. So like people are basically waking up to what in fact is going on, and then they just see it, and then they have to kind of sit on it, and for the most part be quiet, because it's, both other people are just kind of still looking in the wrong place, so to speak. And then, because obviously, if there's anything that maybe can help people understand why it's done this way and not in any other way, that's the only acceptable ethical way to do it. Because if you're going to be doing anything that even remotely resembles what people imagine the disclosure to be, which is like big announcements, the president comes to the podium and does this whole thing, there is no world, there is no scenario in which this does not produce mass panic. Even for the people that really want to know, there is no world in which this does not disturb the system way too much.
Right.
It has to be done gently through the entire system at once. It cannot be one person telling you about this, right? So, for example, I'm telling you what I discovered. Okay, great. But people get to still accept what I'm saying, not accept what I'm saying. I'm just a person, just like them. They have the same value. They have the same level of importance in the system as a node in the system that either accepts or rejects a proposition. That still very much belongs in the more gentle way, right? Versus somebody with high authority coming on and saying, here's how things are, because now it just changes the entire thing, right? And I'm not saying that UFOs are not real. I've seen them myself. I know they exist. But these claims about like knowing who they are, where they're from, all that stuff, of course I can't know, and it's completely realistic to assume that some governments might know. My impression after interacting with these things is that they don't really know. Like they just kind of, it's a story that is being told to create the idea that somebody somewhere knows, which actually pacifies the panic, right? Which, by the way, is not a bad idea, to be clear. Like, I'm not actually knocking it down. Like, it might be the best way to do it. But I think the disclosure is happening. It will happen more and more. But all people need to know, they can know themselves. All they got to do is pay attention. So, like, pay attention to your inner space more than you paying attention to podcasts or other people or anything like this. It can be told to you directly. You just need to kind of quiet yourself and pay attention and listen.
Right. Just like humans, I believe, with the non-human intelligences, there's a duality amongst them. Have you experienced negative or malevolent intelligences during your DMT experiences?
Yeah, many times.
Could you tell us about the experiences and what you think may be behind it or what you gleaned from it?
That's a contentious one because it's hard to say, right? There's a lot of ideas about it. So like, there's the idea that, well, hey man, reality is yin and yang. Like, it's everything, and who's to say one person's darkness is somebody else's beauty, right? So it's kind of like there's this idea. The other idea is these are energies run amok, or that they don't want to listen to the source or whatever, right? And notice that whomever believes whatever version that I just told, they're convinced of it, right? If you ask a Christian, they're convinced of it. If you ask a person who's all about like it's all balanced and it is what it is, and they have the right to exist just like everybody else, they're convinced of it. So everybody is very convinced of everything. This is why I don't really know how much water really what I'm saying holds for people. I don't know. I know they're real, or at least if I'm accepting that any of it is real, which means that I have to accept that they are real as well. And I think that it's just a matter of, I think I fall more in the second category, that I think it's just the nature of reality. Like, it contains the dark and the light, right? And people love these ideas of like, well, darkness is just the lack of light. Well, the majority of the universe is dark, so I think it might be the other way around. It might be default, actually. We like the idea that, it all starts with light and then darkness is just the lack of light. But if you look around, 99% of it is dark, right? So maybe that's actually default. But the more I interact with the public, the more I understand that what I say actually does like some swaying for people. So in that regard, I feel obligated to say that what you want to always be asking yourself, which sometimes is not the most comfortable question to ask yourself, but I think it's an important one. Every person should always ask themselves, why do I care about that? I don't know how many people really pause and think about that, right? If you talk to me about, we just spoke about the disclosure or anything else, why does it matter to you? So if it's just a matter of entertainment, okay, I get it. But like, look beyond it. Like, why do you care, right? Because if you care in terms of what the truth is, then let's face it, none of us knows. Like, all the people with all the confidence, we don't know, and you don't know, right? I don't care who you are, you don't know. But if you're talking about like what we want to assume about reality, which gives rise to this scenario or that scenario, like the kind of beliefs we have and the kind of futures that it gives rise to, okay, I'm with you there. That's an important component to consider. Well, then I would say it doesn't really matter what it really is until you can interact with it directly in ways that make a difference. So like if right now, there's a big, I'm sure you're familiar, of course, this big idea of like prison Earth, right? Whatever. Okay. Well, here's the thing. This is a completely irrelevant idea unless you can actually do something with it, right? So if that's the case, and you spend your time kind of giving a lot of credence to this idea without having any shred, like people think there's evidence, there's zero evidence for this, right? But it's an idea that a lot of people repeat, so people confuse that with evidence. That's not what evidence is. So then they say, well, so many people wouldn't be talking about it if it wouldn't be true. No, that's not true at all. A lot of people talk about a lot of things that are complete nonsense. However, it's not even about the claim itself. If it's true and there's nothing you can do about it, why not just enjoy this? Because all you're doing is that you're just adding suffering inside of the state that you're already in. Maybe the fact that you made not aware of it is actually for your own benefit, right? And then just enjoy this. Just step outside, enjoy nature, live your life, enjoy your friends, all that stuff, right? And that's a much better time spent. Now, if you still insist that, no, we got to know, like, it gives you a lot of meaning of kind of pursuit after the whatever truth it is. Everybody have the right to do whatever they want. I would just submit to you, you would be much happier. Why not assume good possibilities? You have as much evidence for the belief of prison Earth And I know some people are screaming at the screen right now because they think there's zero evidence. So I'll be very clear with you. But do you have as much evidence for this as much as you have for the best possibility you ever imagined? What if this is just all beautiful school and all of these ideas are actually forms of kind of lessons that you have to partake in to see how you progress with your understanding, with your state of being? And the reason that I think it makes much more sense is because if you're moving into a world, which we already are kind of slowly moving into one, where everything becomes available all the time for cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, right? Eventually, you will create a value system and an incentive system that basically has everything on offer and it's just there for you, right? And if you're moving into a world like that, where there's all the possible goods all the time for no real like need of you reciprocating in any way, like immediately in that moment, well, then the only value becomes your energy. It's like if right now I can go to the store and grab something and leave and don't need to pay and just everything I need is right there. There's no scarcity. There's no, right? If we live in that world, well, then the value you previously provided as someone who's part of the workforce, who's providing these goods, that value is out. That's no longer valuable. So what is valuable in a world where everything is always available? How people feel when they're in your presence. If that's the only real value, all of a sudden, being a dickhead is no longer acceptable like it would be if you also are really good fill in the blank. Like people accept certain quirks of your energy just because you're really good at this thing that we all need, right? But now that we have it, we don't need you for that anymore. What good do we get from your presence? Well, it's how people feel when you're in their presence. And if you believe in like these divine spaces, which for sure, if they discover infinite energy and all the stuff that people tend to believe in the name of the things that are hidden from us, right? A lot of the belief about the disclosures that there's these infinite technologies that are just blocked from our knowledge, and people get really upset about that, right? Okay, well then you do believe then that it's possible to get to a place where these technologies are available. Then by default, it means that there's worlds in which these technologies are real, right? And then by default, what it means is that in the world that these technologies are real, the only value of any conscious being is their vibes. So wouldn't it stand to reason that before we invited to a party in a world like that, they would wait for us to transform ourselves into such a being that it's pleasant to be around as a collective, right? And then that's the part that I think people miss. Like all of these like crazy ideas, not crazy, but like all these like really big ideas about disclosures, ascending, all of this stuff. You will never escape who you are, no matter what happens. There's this short book called Wherever You Go, There You Are, which means that if you ascend right now and you have the inner state of someone who gets to be pretty negative or angry or whatever, well, now you're just going to be angry in 5D. That's not going to change. Do you think it's just going to be lifted off of you? That's your responsibility. You need to fix that. There's nothing in the universe that can change that, but aside from you. So instead of looking out there for all these reasons and who's dark and who's light, what about you? Did you offer to help your neighbor today? Did you what were the things that you were working on to make your immediate bubble a better place? Because if you can't do that, what chance do you have to change anything out there, right? But ultimately, I think that's the focus should constantly be inwards. And if you do believe that we create our own realities, at least to some degree, I think it would even more stand to reason to imagine a better world versus hypothesize about all the most negative worlds. I'm even in the habit now, there's a lot of channels that basically their whole thing is kind of like this, the investigation of all these like occult and dark and all of that. Well, now listen, I know personally some people that for them it's like the most beautiful thing. They love it. All the power. Like keep going. Like you represent this energy. Beautiful. You should do that. But if you interact with these things because they scare you and you just want to press that button, I would reconsider, because you're entering a world in which you're now making this into a reality. So actually just allow yourself to also imagine a really beautiful future. It's in your hands. It's in your mind. It's in your ability to imagine forward as something that is actually ending up in a really beautiful scenario, not in a end of the world kind of scenario.
Something I find really fascinating is shared experiences with psychedelics, where two people will experience the same thing. I think this provides great evidence that it's not just a hallucination that we're experiencing. Have you had many shared experiences? If so, could you tell us about some of them?
Not a lot. I've had a few where we kind of saw the same object in the room with someone else. I've had one where, well, yeah, I mean, that would be the majority of it. The code is one of them, obviously. I wish somebody could see the console that I'm seeing. I'm seeing this like computer console that appears for me, but nobody seems to be able to do that. Yeah, I actually I don't have much in that regard. Like I know people talk about that. I've only experienced it like maybe 2 or 3 times in my whole psychedelic career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on.
But I mean, I totally accept that as well. I mean, for me, it's very clear that whomever they are, it's real, right? One thing that we can say about that is because it's a pretty well recorded phenomena. So like it's not that rare actually. People do experience this, especially on ayahuasca, for example. And the answer that science tends to throw at it is kind of very, very unsatisfying, which is like, well, this is just a mass hallucination. Well, hold on one second. What does that mean? Like, do you know what that means? Like, well, did you have an explanation of how that happens? That you get to attach the word just before it? Like, what do you mean just? Like, you don't know how this happens, right? That's exactly the claim here. The fact that you added the word just before it doesn't nullify the mystery. Same goes with placebo, for example. It's just placebo. Well, you don't know the first thing about how placebo works. Nobody knows. I was blown away by this, and I'm equating them exactly the same thing. I thought that it's just something that most people probably don't understand about how the body works and everything. But no, like you can go look this up. There's no actual data on how placebo works aside from just the acceptance that, well, somehow the mind convinces the body to do the thing. Well, yeah, okay, isn't this crazy? Like, doesn't that tell you that there's something here worth investigating just on that assumption alone? How did we end up in a position where something that we understand nothing about got chucked into a bin of science with the word just before it? Like, what is that? How does that work? So, and this belongs in the same category. Like, so this is something this is one of these things where science absolutely needs to go through a reform in that regard, which is that, again, I love science. Like, I think science is one of the most important things humans ever did. I'm absolutely of that conviction. But this is where science needs to kind of look a long stare in the mirror and say, okay, yeah, we're kind of messing up here. Like this is a big one that we're kind of overlooking, which is we just decide a priori that these phenomena are no way they're real. We just decided this, and then anything that kind of even touches that wall, we're just going to put the word just before it and put it in this bin. No. We don't. That's not empirical. That's not coherent. That's just nonsense. Like, there's no other word to describe this. And I think a lot of scientists are kind of waking up to these facts that, science kind of like has these little mishaps and blind spots. But it's definitely one of them. So, like Michael Levine, I don't know if you're familiar, but if you're not, you should definitely look deeply into what he does. Mainstream scientist, biologist. And he's basically revolutionizing biology, and because he found a way to interact with this bioelectrical signal that seems to be encoding information on a software level in organisms that isn't in the genetical code, so not in the hardware. So he can actually give attributes to different creatures that will be passed down to its offsprings without touching the genetic code whatsoever. So like it's somewhere else.
Yeah.
It would do these things to planarium. I think that's how it's pronounced, which is a type of a worm, and it would change that bioelectrical signal in it, and all of a sudden it would have a fake memory that's supposed to have 2 heads. So when the way they replicate is that you cut them and then they become a whole unit all by themselves. the each unit would have two heads now.
Huh.
And it's like, and he's not changing anything about the genes. And Michael is saying, well, everything is placebo. It's just a matter of degree. Like literally, the way you wake up in the morning when you're coming online, so to speak, it literally changes things in your metabolism, in the way that the kinds of chemicals you secrete, and like it is one system. Whatever your conscious perception is doing is part of it. It's some kind of a... Now, he has his own theory about it, which is he thinks it's an execution of some vector space that we don't quite understand. But there's a lot that science was just kind of overlooking for a long time, and placebo is one of them, and mass hallucinations, I think you nailed it. It's definitely one of them.
Oh, that's so fascinating. When you take groups through this experience to view the code, what is the process that you utilize? I know you're not just having them smoke a vape pen and then look at a laser. There's a bit of a process you take them through, right?
So the first thing to say is that we never take groups through it. Within the context of the film, people wanted to participate and they wanted to do it. So the way it works is that they basically would, do their thing and show up, and we would just kind of guide them to the thing because we can't really tell them to do it. Now I'm doing a retreat in which the stuff will be available. So whenever we do these sessions, we're basically just setting up as much of the ceremonial boundaries that any other sacred ceremony would have, which is do some breath work before, just 3 rounds of Wim Hof, do some sometimes, depending on people's comfortability level, would even say a little prayer to kind of open the circle, things like this, just to kind of set up a setting and a boundary. And then it definitely makes a difference, it seems, in terms of energy at the end of it and all of that stuff. So I think there's really important the role that ceremony plays in this whole thing is really important, way more than I previously considered. Like I was really not big into these kind of witchy stuff, but like but I think it's very important. I think it sets up, I would say pretty reliably, it sets up an energetic container that changes the experience and changes how people feel after the experience. So it's just a matter of attention, I would say. It doesn't really matter. Well, maybe it does, but my experience is that it doesn't really matter that much the exact words you're saying, like with the prayer or whatever. What matters more is your attention, state of being, inducing a more positive state in the room from all the humans involved. I think that's really the main aim with these things.
What are your thoughts on the psychedelic industry and the direction it's headed? These healing groups and facilities. How do you feel about how everything is progressing with psychedelic industry?
I think it's fine. I know a lot of people pass criticism on it, but I think it's honestly the passing of the criticism of it is just as much of a fad as the thing they're criticizing. So one of the biggest critiques, right? It's kind of like, oh, look at the Western world. Here they are again, taking stuff, appropriating stuff from the Aboriginal people and from the shamanic traditions. And of course, there's always going to be room for real criticism of how to do things, especially in this open society that tends to do that. But notice that critique is exactly the thing that modern societies, that's their gift to the world, which is the fact that we get to do this. We get to criticize one another and correct course accordingly. That's actually our strength. And that is sometimes kind of being obfuscated a little bit from this whole thing, because the truth is that complaining about others doing things is the easiest thing you can possibly do, right? It requires you to do no work whatsoever. You just sit and in front of your device and just like typing away. That's all you got to do, which is just as much, like I said, as much of a fad and a phenomena that exists in the Western world and exists nowhere else, because this lack of coherence that we notice in ourselves also happens to be the thing that brings all the progress, because we're constantly at each other's throats at doing things better. For better or worse, that's the thing that actually drives progress, right? So I'm not that strident about this whole thing. I think Yes, there's many ways in which we can do things better all the time, but that's what we do best, and we will get better. And if you notice, even the fact of that we're talking about this already gives rise to this next iteration of itself, which is like people hear it, the criticism, and they go, oh, okay, didn't realize it comes across that way. And then a lot of them correct course. They say, okay, we'll include more of kind of give more credit to, the traditions we learned this from. People are already doing this, right? And that is the result of the fact that we allow for this criticism to happen, which I think is actually a really beautiful thing about the Western culture. There's the thing that to be noticed is that everybody gets to play a role, and either everybody are a problem or no one is, right? You got to kind of decide. So like these more primitive cultures, or what we would call primitive in terms of like modern days, right? Their level of connectedness to nature is way more advanced than ours. There's no question about that. But the reason for that is because they don't have to deal with the number of things we have to deal with, like in terms of our attention, all of that stuff. And you can say, well, yeah, exactly. We should all go back to live like this. Hold on one second. But if another meteor comes, like the one that wiped out the dinosaurs, you're not going to deflect it with what they're doing. That's not going to happen. You can only deflect it with what we're doing. And the price we're paying, which kind of feel a little bit more disconnected from what we would call the biological tapestry and all of that stuff. It's almost like a prerequisite to then do the more advanced things. So they both get to play a role. And the way that I see it is that it's a collaboration. The knowledge we gain from people who remind us how important it is to stay connected to ourselves, to each other, to nature, that's a reminder by people who were holding that knowledge, which is like, hey, don't forget where you came from. Don't forget your roots. Beautiful. And so we can inject that into the modern future human, which would both be able to create more beautiful and more advanced technology, but also not forget where they came from and have the reverence and the importance and the respect for everything that came before, right? So it's the best of both worlds. That's where it needs to go. This unification of the two human hemispheres, human kind of like as a collective. And that is the only way I would say is to get through this stage of wherever we are in our evolution and proceed to a more beautiful future. Without it, if it's just constantly, it's so easy to slide into the old pattern without realizing you're doing it. People, the second they wake up a little bit, they immediately import self-criticism to collective criticism. Well, you're still criticizing. Like if you're saying, here's all the things that I'm noticing about these humans over there doing wrong, well, the attitude of blame and accusation is really what you're doing still. But if you want to become the species that we believe we can be, these beautiful custodians of knowledge and beauty and protection of this planet, we have to see ourselves as that. One easy way to see this is that we all kind of know at this point that if you don't even need to be a therapist for this, right? When people come to you, a good friend comes to you for an advice, and you hear them kind of having a lot of negative talk about themselves. It's like, oh, I do this again. I'm terrible, right? It's like, oh, that kind of stuff. Everybody knows at this point that the first thing to tell them is like, hey, you might want to lay off on the self-negative talk because you're perpetuating that attitude. You believe you're terrible, so you're never going to get better because you're literally saying it. It's you casting spells, right? Okay, well, the collective is no different. Same. Like, you can't be saying humans are a disease and expect somehow one day humans to become all of a sudden this beautiful species. If that's what you said, that's how we're going to... And the more things we say about ourselves en masse, even though it seems like we're just saying, oh, no, it's over there. Like, I'm good. I'm aware of this. I'm good. Like, no. You are casting this blanket of terribleness on everybody. So there's no way you're going to be aiming towards a humanity that actually can become really good. It's not. That point really bothers people, and I'm now much more careful with how I'm expressing it. But there's no two ways about this. This very strong criticism we tend to have about everybody else, and especially people in power. If you have not yourself done anything today that can benefit the environment, other people, somehow, in some form, you don't get to criticize anyone else.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on how these discoveries may affect religious systems, dogmatic beliefs, the discoveries about the nature of reality, that there may be non-human intelligences involved, and it may be much different than traditional biblical or spiritual beliefs would have us believe?
Well, I think it's actually surprisingly, especially specifically for Christians, for example, I don't think it's that surprising, honestly. And I actually recently befriended a gentleman who is a very devout Muslim, and he was, he came, he saw the code. He says that, at least in Islam, it's like the idea of the multiverse and parallel worlds is like a very common idea. It's in fact what a lot of Muslims believe. So it's not that surprising to them. I think religious people will always keep seeing it through their lens. And I don't even think they're necessarily wrong. Like, I think that there's definitely something going on that at least some of the way the religious enterprises chose to see it as, kind of translates. Like it's just that what is the real thing? Well, that is not something that you can pack into words. That's for sure. But I think everybody accepts this, right? Like you can't really express what the Lord is. You can't really express what Allah is. You could like these beliefs about what is there at the top that is we all kind of owe our existence to. I think everybody are in agreement that you can't really express that with words. Good. Okay, so the ultimate mystery cannot be expressed with words. And now, really what we're saying is that we're playing different language games to express how it feels to us, how we feel about it. So I don't think it actually would be as disturbing as long as we're allowing the message to be fluid enough for people to just see it through their own lens. The idea isn't to just break the status quo. It's to expand the blanket of perception. It's to allow ourselves to expand that bubble and allow more things in at the same time and realize, different people just have a different story about it, but we are talking about the same thing. It's more about the vibe of it than the words we use to describe that vibe, I would say. So I don't think it would do much to change people's religious belief systems, nor do I think it should. I think that if somebody finds a way to be connected to the energy of that transcendent whatever it is, they should absolutely stay there. Right. It's important that people actually feel it versus the kind of ideas they exchange about it.
One more thing. Do you think synchronistic events is the simulation or these intelligences attempting to communicate with us in some way?
Yeah, I think it's more we're coming in alignment with what is already unfolding. My perception of synchronicities is basically your mind enters a state in which it's more aware of what the rest of the world is also doing, including what the rest of the world is doing through them. And this alignment feels like a synchronicity because you just came into awareness of the thing that you thought was already supposed to happen, but really what happened is that you became aware of what's about to happen in a way that you're not familiar with. You see a little further, the level of ability to see kind of like into the horizon of the potentials in front of you, it expands. And I think that's what's happening there. But I'll be the first to admit that I don't really understand the mechanism. It's just the one that makes the most sense to me.
As far as the experience with psychedelics, the initial experience that people have, I know for myself and almost every other person I've spoken to that has done psychedelics, after the very first experience, something about their entire perception shifts and they see the world slightly differently. Even if it's a small amount, there is something different about the way they view the world. What do you think that mechanism is? What do you think that means on a larger scale?
I think that the aperture of meaning expands for people. They see more of what things really are. The real deep connections of things to other things and to themselves. Almost the essence of things. So when you see more of the essence, you see more of the reality of its existence, so to speak. It's a little hard to see if you're not familiar at all with, like, if people have never done, like, meditation. But we do have these states happen to us haphazardly sometimes, like when we fall in love, when we have a child, when there's a new experience, a new country you go to, because at that point, your brain opens for analysis in real time versus repetition more. And that places you more in the presence of what things, you allow things to actually inform you about themselves instead of deciding for them what they are. When we fall into the narrative of the regular life, then everything is already so familiar that your brain almost spends no time of actually opening these doors of perception to really get information from the outside, so to speak. It already kind of knows how things go. In a conversation, you speak to somebody at a party, and you know that clique of friends. You know exactly how things talk. People talk. Things talk. People talk. You know that person. There's a cadence, there's a rhythm, there's a kind of a joke that I say now and they say, and there's that zinger and ha ha ha, and it's like a dance that you really kind of rehearsed a billion times. And notice it feels very mundane, right? It's rare that we have these like, oh, like, wow, why does that happen? Well, when you go to a new country, especially one that is radically different than yours, with different rules, forget about the language, it's like things are like Japan, right? It looks like an alien planet, truly. And it's so, all of a sudden you're there, like you're more like here. It's literally because your brain is trying to analyze. It needs more data. It doesn't have this like familiarity of like, because it thinks it's gonna zig and it zags, and it's like, wait, why did it zag? Oh, well, I have to pay attention to know why it zagged. Okay, well, let me really pay attention here. So I think that is so if we can learn to do this more on command, we would have a much better overview of what things really unfold, what things really are when they're unfolding in front of us. And psychedelics do exactly that for you. Psychedelics very often they reduce the activity in the DMN, in the default mode network, which we know is associated with anything associated with ourselves. So it's almost like you can kind of think of it like, it's of course a very super oversimplification, but you can think of the default mode network as the network in the brain responsible for informing things about what you perceive yourself to be. When you're saying my car, I love this food, this and that, it activates the DMN. So like when you're pointing to yourself, right? And what you're pointing to is not just a physical body, you're pointing to some kind of something that is somewhere in the middle that you kind of feel yourself to be, the self, right? So what psychedelics do is mushrooms for sure. We know this for sure from research. The default mode network reduces activity, and you actually kind of diffuse. There's not so much this feeling of a central unit. There's more just kind of the world and what's happening, and it does that. It puts you more in the presence of what things really are, or the information that these things give out are less obscured by your already predetermined decision to see them as this or that. And I think that's why it changes people's perspective very often, because their brain is forced to allow more of that external information in, and then they have to kind of take that into account.
Right, that makes sense. Danny, this was fascinating. Thank you so much. Before I let you go, remind the audience how they can find out more about you, get access to all your content.
Thank you so much. Just Dango Thoughts on YouTube, main channel, DANGO Thoughts. And you can also check out my website with all my links, dannygoler.com. Oh, one thing, yeah, if you guys want to, if anybody has interest in the retreat, I think we have a couple more spots left. It's going to be in Costa Rica, February 28th to March 7th. There's still a couple more spots left. You can go to coreretreat.com, so core without the E. So it's COR retreat.com, and you can book a call with me and we can talk about it. Yeah, that's the only other extra announcement I would make.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you again. We'll definitely be talking again. So much more we can get into. Until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We'll talk again tomorrow. See y'all then. Hello, friends. I am so excited to tell you about Independent Media Token. Independent Media Token is a brand new way to show your support for independent media without having to donate a dime. Independent Media Token is a cryptocurrency on the Solana blockchain designed to generate funds to promote and foster the growth of independent content creators, allowing them to engage in their art without having to worry about being demonetized. Through a network of media partners, of which you yourself can become a part of, Independent Media Token's goal is to ensure the powers that be can never cut off all of our areas of funding and censor the only free voices left in the world. Join the movement today. You can pick up Independent Media Token using Phantom Wallet or the Solana wallet of your choice, where you can easily swap your Solana for IMT. Grab some IMT today and remember to always know your team. To learn more, visit independentmediatoken.com or use the link right in the description. Are you and your family prepared for an emergency? Maybe the fake alien invasion? Now is the time to prepare yourself and your family for any event. Check out Prep Starts Now. Their mission is to provide high-quality preparedness products that empower individuals and families to be ready for any situation. They're committed to delivering reliable, trusted gear to ensure your safety, security, and peace of mind in times of need. Their product selection is carefully curated to provide you with the essential gear you need to stay prepared. From emergency kits to tactical tools, every item is chosen for its reliability and practicality. Prep Starts Now understands the importance of family, and their goal is to equip you with everything you need to build a solid plan for your family's preparedness. In today's ever-changing world, being prepared is more important than ever, and Prep Starts Now is here to help you and your family stay ready with quality products and practical guidance. Use the link in the description and get 15% off your order. We live in an incredible age of information. More and more, we're discovering that we've been lied to and misled about much of our human history. Cory Hughes is providing profound revelations about World War I, World War II, the JFK assassination, Martin Luther King's assassination, and much, much more on his new Substack, Bloody History. Subscribe now for as little as $5 monthly. Just click that link right in the description to get started now and learn about our true history.